Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he looked at the drilling reports. The mining operation on Kepler 440c had been running for 3 months now, and they were finally making good progress. The planet's surface was covered in strange crystal formations that made digging difficult, but the valuable minerals underneath made it all worth it. "Hey Jake, you need to see this," called out Lisa Wells from across the mining pit. She was their best geologist, and her voice carried a tone he had never heard before, something between excitement and fear. Jake walked over to where Lisa stood at the edge of the massive excavation site. The hole was 3 kilometers deep now, carved out by their heavy machinery over weeks of constant work. But something was different today. Where there should have been more rock and crystal, there was something else entirely. "What am I looking at?" Jake asked, though he could already see it was unlike anything they had found before. "Metal," Lisa said quietly. "Not just any metal. Look at the size of it." Jake stared down into the pit. What they had uncovered was clearly artificial. A smooth, dark surface stretched across the entire bottom of the excavation site. Metals seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making it hard to tell exactly how big it was. But from what they could see, it was huge. "Danny, bring the scanner down here," Jake shouted to one of the workers above. Danny Cooper was their equipment specialist, a quiet man who knew every piece of machinery, and better than anyone else. Danny climbed down the rough path they had carved into the side of the pit, carrying a portable scanner in his arms. "Never seen anything like this before," he said as he approached the strange surface. "Looks old. Really old." Lisa was already running her own tests. "The rock around it dates back millions of years," she said, checking her instruments. "But this metal? It's not showing up in any of our databases. The composition is completely unknown." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. In all his years of mining across different planets, he had never found anything that their advanced scanners couldn't identify. Everything in human space had been cataloged and studied. This was something new. "We need to call this in," he said. "This is way above our pay grade." Within hours, Dr. Carl Hendricks arrived from the nearest research station. The xenarchaeologist was a thin man with gray hair who had spent his life studying the remains of ancient civilizations. But even he seemed puzzled by what they had found. "The surface is perfectly smooth," he said, running his hand along the metal. "No tool marks, no signs of construction. It's like it was formed in one piece." More scientists arrived over the next few days. The Colonial Science Division sent their best people, led by Director Patricia Stone. She was a tough woman who had overseen dozens of important discoveries. But Jake could see the wonder in her eyes as she examined their find. "We're going to need a full excavation," she announced. "This could be the most important archaeological discovery in human history." The work began immediately. They brought in specialized equipment and dozens of additional workers. Slowly, carefully, they began to uncover more of the strange structure. What they revealed was beyond anything they had imagined. The object was enormous, 800 meters long and perfectly preserved despite being buried for millions of years. Its surface was covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move when looked at directly. The geometric designs were so complex that they hurt to stare at for too long. "It's some kind of machine," Dr. Hendricks said during one of their daily briefings. "But the technology is far beyond anything we've ever seen. Even beyond what the most advanced alien species have shown us." Representatives from other species began arriving. The Zephyrians sent their top scientists, insectoid beings who communicated through clicking sounds and chemical signals. The Aquans, who looked like walking fish, brought their underwater excavation expertise. Everyone wanted to understand what had been found. But despite all their advanced technology and combined knowledge, they could learn nothing more about the mysterious object. It remained silent and unresponsive to every test they performed. Scanners could not penetrate its surface. Drills could not scratch it. Even the most sophisticated alien technology had no effect. "It's like it's waiting for something," Lisa said one evening as they sat around their camp, looking down at the illuminated excavation site, "like it's dormant but not dead." Jake nodded. Hey, he had been having the same feeling. There was something about the object that seemed almost alive, even though it showed no signs of activity. Sometimes he thought he could hear a very faint humming sound coming from deep within it. But the instruments detected nothing. Danny had been working late that night, trying to repair one of the drilling machines that had broken down during the day. The tool he was using was old and had a sharp edge that he had forgotten about. As he reached for a component, the metal sliced across his palm, opening a deep cut. "Damn it," he muttered, looking at the blood flowing from his hand. He needed to get to the medical station, but first he had to shut down the equipment properly. Safety protocols were important, even when you were bleeding, as he worked. Some of his blood dripped down onto the excavation platform and fell into the pit below. The drops landed on the smooth metal surface of the ancient object. What happened next would change everything. The moment Danny's blood touched the metal, the entire structure came alive. Brilliant lights erupted from every surface, casting strange shadows across the excavation site. The geometric patterns began moving, flowing like liquid across the metal in complex sequences that seemed to have meaning and purpose. The humming sound that Jake had sometimes imagined became real and loud. Ow. The air through their bones. Workers throughout the site stopped what they were doing and stared in amazement and fear. Danny stumbled backward, still holding his bleeding hand. "What did I do?" he whispered. The lights continued to pulse and flow across the object's surface. New patterns appeared, more complex than before. Some sections of the metal became transparent, revealing glimpses of incredible machinery working. Inside, corridors and chambers could be seen, filled with devices that served unknown purposes. Jake ran down into the pit, followed by Lisa and Dr. Hendricks. The three of them stood at the edge of the now active object, watching in wonder as it continued its light show. The patterns seemed to be trying to communicate something, but the meaning was beyond their understanding. "It responded to human blood," Dr. Hendricks said quietly. "After millions of years of dormancy, it activated when it came into contact with human DNA." Director Stone arrived within minutes, along with security teams and more scientists. Entire camp was in chaos as people tried to understand what was happening. But the object itself seemed calm now, as if its initial activation had been just a greeting. "Get me a communication link to Earth immediately," Stone ordered. "Contact all the alien representatives. They need to see this." As the night continued, the object's activity settled into a steady rhythm. The lights pulsed gently, and the patterns moved in slow, hypnotic cycles. It was clearly waiting for something more than just the accidental contact it had received. Jake looked at Danny, who was getting his hand bandaged by a medic. "You might have just changed the course of human history," he said. Danny shook his head. "I was just trying to fix a drill." But as they all watched the ancient machine continue its patient display, they knew that nothing would ever be the same. Again, whatever this object was, wherever it had come from, it had been waiting for humanity to find it. And now that it was awake, there was no telling what would happen next. The news of the machine's awakening spread across the galaxy faster than anyone had expected. Within a week, Kepler-440c had transformed from a quiet mining world into the most important location in human space. Ships arrived daily, bringing scientists, military personnel, and representatives from every major species in the known. Galaxy. Dr. Carl Hendricks found himself leading the largest xenoarchaeological team ever assembled. Had grown to include over 200 specialists from dozens of different worlds. But despite all the brilliant minds now working on the problem, the ancient machine remained as mysterious as ever. "The patterns are definitely a form of communication," Dr. Hendricks explained during the morning briefing. "But we're dealing with a completely unknown language. Every time we think we've found a pattern, it changes." The machine had been active for 7 days now, its surface constantly flowing with lights and geometric designs. The patterns seemed to respond to the presence of humans, becoming more complex when people approached and settling into simpler forms when left alone. But no one had been able to figure out what it was trying to say. "What about the alien representatives?" asked Director Patricia Stone. "Have any of their species encountered anything like this before?" Dr. Hendricks shook his head. "That's the strange part. Not only do they not recognize the technology, but the machine seems to completely ignore their presence. Watch." He led the group down to the excavation site where several alien scientists were working. Clickseth, the lead Zephyrian researcher, was attempting to interact with one of the control panels that had appeared on the machine's surface. His forearms moved in complex patterns, trying to trace the geometric shapes that flowed across the metal. Nothing happened. The lights continued their slow dance, but they didn't change or respond to the insectoid's touch in any way. It was as if Clixt H wasn't even there. Frustrating beyond measure, Clixt H clicked in his translated speech. My species has studied ancient technologies for thousands of your years. Never have we encountered something so unresponsive to our methods. Lisa Wells walked over to the same panel. The moment her human fingers touched the surface, the entire section lit up with brilliant colors. New patterns appeared, spinning and shifting in complex arrangements. Symbols began forming, clearly some kind of written language, though none they could read yet. It's not just that it responds to humans, Lisa said, pulling her hand back and watching the lights fade. It's like it was designed specifically for us. Look at the size of these control surfaces. They're perfectly sized for human hands. High researcher Veltar of the Altair hegemony observed from nearby. Species was tall and graceful, with elongated limbs and pale blue skin. They were considered among the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, and Veltar's presence showed how seriously the hegemony was taking this discovery. This is unprecedented, Veltar said in his melodic voice. In all our recorded history, we have never encountered technology that discriminates between species in this manner. It suggests a level of sophistication far beyond current understanding. Commander Ryan Blake of the Terran Space Navy had arrived 2 days earlier with a small fleet to secure the site. The military presence was supposed to be reassuring, but Jake Morrison could see the tension it created. The alien representatives didn't like having human warships in orbit while they were trying to study what might be the most important discovery in galactic history. Sir, we're getting more requests for access, Blake reported to Director Stone. The Synthetic Collective wants to send a full analysis team. The Ethereal Conclave has requested permission to manifest physical forms for direct examination. The Zephyrian military is asking why they can't bring their own security forces. Stone rubbed her temples. The political situation was getting more complicated by the hour. Every species wanted to study the machine, but its clear preference for humans was creating tensions that hadn't existed before. For now, we maintain the current arrangement, she decided. Scientific cooperation with all allied species, but security remains under human control. Danny Cooper had become something of a celebrity since his blood had awakened the machine. Scientists from every species wanted to study him, take samples, and understand what made him special. But Danny was just a maintenance worker who wanted to get back to fixing equipment. I don't understand what all the fuss is about, he told Jake during their lunch break. I cut my hand, bled on some old metal, and now everyone acts like I'm some kind of chosen one or something. Jake looked down at the excavation site where dozens of researchers were still trying to unlock the machine's secrets. Maybe you are. Chosen, Danny. Maybe we all are. The breakthrough came on the 8th day, when engineer Amy Foster made a discovery that changed everything. Amy had been studying the machine's response patterns when she noticed something unusual. It's not just responding to any human, she announced during the evening briefing. It's responding differently to different people. She had brought data from her tests with various team members. When Jake touched the controls, certain sections lit up. When Lisa tried, different areas became active. Annie's touch produced the strongest response, but even he couldn't activate everything. Look at this, Amy said, showing them her readings. The machine is scanning us somehow. It's reading our genetic patterns, our brain activity, maybe even things we don't understand yet. And it's deciding what each person is allowed to access. Dr. Hendricks leaned forward, studying the data. You're suggesting it has some kind of security system? Is that it's determining clearance levels based on human biology? That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Amy replied. And I think some of us have higher clearance than others. The implications were staggering. If the machine could read human genetics and determine access levels, it meant whoever built it had an incredibly detailed understanding of human biology. But that should have been impossible. Humans had only been in space for a few centuries, and they had never encountered any species with that level of knowledge about them. "We need volunteers," Director Stone announced. "People willing to attempt deeper contact with the machine. But I want everyone to understand the risks. No idea what this thing is capable of." Jake volunteered immediately, followed by Lisa, Amy, and several others. Even Danny, despite his reluctance to be in the spotlight, agreed to participate in the experiments. The tests began the next day. One by one, the volunteers placed their hands on different sections of the machine's surface. The results were remarkable, and terrifying at the same time when Amy touched a particular panel. The machine projected a three-dimensional map of the galaxy above their heads. Stars and planets appeared in perfect detail, with strange symbols marking certain locations. Some of the symbols pulsed with the same rhythm as the machine's lights. Lisa's touch activated what appeared to be historical records. Images flashed through the air showing civilizations that none of them recognized. Great cities, massive space stations, and technologies that seemed like magic. But all of the images showed societies that appeared to be long dead, their worlds empty and silent. Jake's attempt produced mathematical equations that floated in the air around them. The formulas were so complex that even the most advanced computers couldn't solve them. But they clearly related to physics and engineering far beyond current understanding. Danny's touch was the most dramatic. When he placed his hand on the central control panel, the entire machine seemed to come fully alive. Sections that had remained dark since the awakening began glowing with intense light. New control surfaces appeared, and the hum from within the machine grew so loud it could be felt as much as heard. But it was also clearly too much for him. Danny collapsed after only a few seconds of contact, his body shaking from the neural strain. The medical team rushed to help him while the machine slowly returned to its previous state. "It's trying to download something into our minds," Dr. Hendricks realized. "Knowledge, instructions, maybe even memories. But our brains aren't equipped to handle that much information at once." Klixith had been watching the experiments with growing frustration. Species prided themselves on their analytical abilities, but they were completely shut out of this discovery. Finally, his patience ran out. "This is unacceptable," he clicked angrily. "No single species should have exclusive access to such technology. It belongs to all intelligent life." Before anyone could stop him, Klixth rushed forward and slammed his forearms against the central control panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the machine emitted a sound like a warning alarm. A pulse of energy erupted from its surface. The pulse didn't hurt Klixth, but it launched him backward across the excavation site. He landed hard against a pile of equipment, his chitinous shell cracked, but not seriously damaged. The machine's lights flickered angrily for several minutes before returning to their normal pattern. "It didn't just ignore him," Amy said quietly. "It actively rejected him, like it was defending itself from unauthorized access." Commander Blake stepped forward, his hand resting on his weapon. "I think we need to establish some ground rules. Here, this machine is clearly human technology, or at least it was meant for humans." 3 weeks had passed since the machine's awakening, and Dr. Carl Hendricks felt like he was drowning in information. Every day brought new discoveries, each one more incredible than the last. The ancient machine had begun revealing its secrets, but those secrets were reshaping everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. The breakthrough had come when Amy Foster discovered that the machine responded to specific thought patterns. By concentrating on particular images or concepts while touching the control surfaces, humans could guide the machine to display related information. It was like having a conversation with something that had been waiting millions of years to speak. "Look at this," Amy said, calling the research team over to the main display area. She placed her palm on the control panel and focused her thoughts on the galaxy map they had seen before. Immediately, the machine projected a three-dimensional the image of the Milky Way above their heads. But this wasn't the galaxy as they knew it. This map showed the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago, when it was dominated by a single civilization that spanned thousands of star systems. The beings who had built this machine, we're calling them the predecessors, Dr. Hendricks explained to the gathered scientists. They were everywhere. Every habitable world, every strategic location, every important resource. They controlled the entire galaxy. Lisa Wells had been studying the historical records for days. The images the machine showed were breathtaking and terrifying. Cities that floated in space, larger than entire planets. Machines that could move. Stars and reshape worlds. Technology that seemed to bend the very laws of physics. They were gods, she whispered. Compared to them, every species we know today is still in the Stone Age. But High Researcher Veltar of the Altair Hegemony disagreed. No species can simply vanish without trace, he said. There must be evidence of their decline, their destruction, something to explain their disappearance. The answer came from Danny Cooper, who had been reluctantly working with the machine despite his discomfort with all the attention. When he touched the central control panel and concentrated on the question of what had happened to the predecessors, the machine's response was unlike anything they had seen before. Instead of images or star maps, the machine began displaying pure information directly into Danny's mind. He stood frozen for several minutes, his eyes wide and unseeing, while data flowed through his consciousness. When he finally pulled his hand away, he collapsed into a chair, shaking. They didn't die, he said quietly. They evolved, beyond physical, formed beyond the need for worlds or bodies. They became something else entirely. The implications were staggering. Predecessors hadn't been destroyed by war or catastrophe. They had transcended the physical universe itself, leaving behind their vast empire to become beings of pure consciousness and energy. But why did they leave all this behind? Asked Commander Ryan Blake, gesturing at the machine. If they became so advanced, why build something like this? The answer came in pieces over the following days. The machine revealed that the predecessors had created a network of sentinel devices across the galaxy. Each machine was designed to monitor and guide the development of younger civilizations. But they had been programmed to remain dormant until the right conditions were met. They were waiting for us, Amy realized, specifically for humans. This machine and others like it were built to serve humanity. Director Patricia Stone had been dreading this moment. The political implications were enormous. If the predecessors had chosen humanity as their inheritors, every other species in the galaxy would see humans as a threat to the natural order. We need to be very careful about how we share this information, she warned. The wrong word could start a war. But the secret was already spreading. The alien representatives had their own intelligence networks. They were beginning to piece together what the machine was revealing. Clixith had been sending daily reports to the Zephyrion High Council, and his growing frustration was evident in every message. The humans claim they are chosen, he clicked angrily during one of the joint briefings. But chosen by whom? And for what purpose? This machine could be a weapon, a trap, anything. We cannot allow one species to control such power. Veltar was more diplomatic, but equally concerned. The Altair Hegemony has been the galaxy's leading civilization for over 10,000 years, he said. We have guided countless species to enlightenment. Why would these predecessors favor a species that has barely left its home system? The answer came from Bob Martinez, the chief engineer who had been studying the machine's technical specifications. He had discovered that the predecessors had been incredibly detailed in their requirements for their chosen inheritors. It's not just about intelligence or technology, he explained. The machine is scanning for specific genetic markers, neural patterns, and something it calls quantum consciousness resonance. Humans have all three in the exact combination the predecessors were looking for. Dr. Hendricks had been working with xenobiologists to understand what made humans special. The results were unsettling. According to the machine's records, the predecessors visited Earth millions of years ago during the early stages of human evolution. They made subtle changes to our genetic code, encoding specific traits that would make us compatible with their technology.
Oh.
Lisa stared at the data in disbelief. You're saying they created us? The humans are artificial? Not created, Dr. Hendricks? Corrected, modified. It took an existing species and enhanced it for a specific purpose. We're not just random inheritors of their legacy. We're their designated successors. The news hit the galactic community like a shockwave. Some species reacted with wonder and acceptance, seeing humanity as the rightful guardians of ancient wisdom. Others responded with fear and jealousy, unable to accept that they had been passed over in favor of relative newcomers to the galactic stage. The synthetic collective's response was particularly hostile. Their artificial intelligence networks calculated that predecessor technology could be reverse-engineered to create weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. They sent a message to Earth demanding that all research be halted immediately. Biological species are inherently unstable, their communication stated. Such power cannot be trusted to emotional, unpredictable beings. The technology must be secured by logical entities. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. Tony Rodriguez, who had been serving as security chief for the excavation site, noticed something odd in the machine's deep scans of the various alien species present. The predecessors had been thorough in their record-keeping, and their database included genetic profiles of every known species. Most of the profiles match what we'd expect, Tony reported to Director Stone. But some don't. The Zephyrians, the Aquins, even some members of the Altair hegemony show signs of genetic modification, changes that have been happening over thousands of years. Dr. Helen Morse, their xenobiologist, analyzed the data carefully. These modifications aren't random, she concluded. They're systematic, deliberate. Someone or something has been altering these species over millennia. The machine's warnings about something called the Devourers suddenly took on new meaning. According to the predecessor records, these entities existed partially outside normal spacetime. They consumed entire civilizations, but not through direct conquest. Instead, they corrupted species from within, making subtle changes over generations until entire populations became their servants. The genetic modifications we're seeing in the alien species, Dr. Morse explained grimly, they match the patterns the predecessors associated with devourer corruption. The revelations sent shockwaves through the research team. If the predecessors were right, then some of the species they had been working with might already be compromised. The ancient enemy was already here, hidden among the galaxy's civilizations. Jake Morrison felt sick as he considered the implications. How can we tell who's corrupted and who isn't? I can't, Dr. Hendricks admitted. The changes are too subtle, too well integrated. A corrupted individual might not even know they're compromised. Amy had been working with the machine's defensive protocols, trying to understand what humanity was supposed to do with their inheritance. According to the predecessor records, the Sentinel network isn't just about knowledge, she said. It's a defense system. They built it to protect the galaxy from the Devourers. The machine revealed star charts showing the locations of other Sentinel sites throughout human space and beyond. Dozens of ancient machines waited in hidden locations, ready to be activated by human operators. Together, they formed a network, capable of incredible feats of cosmic engineering. But there's a catch, Amy continued. The system requires human operators at each node, and the mental strain of interfacing with predecessor technology is enormous. That many operators won't survive the process. Commander Blake studied the defensive network specifications with growing concern. They're asking us to sacrifice ourselves to save the galaxy. How do we know this isn't just another trap? Danny Cooper had been quietly listening to the discussions, but now he spoke up. "'Cause we don't have a choice," he said. "The machine is showing me sensor readings from the galaxy's edge. Something is coming, something big." The galaxy was falling apart, and Jake Morrison could see it happening from the observation deck of the research station. Ships arrived daily at Kepler-4 to see, but now many of them came armed and ready for conflict. What had started as scientific cooperation was turning into the largest military buildup in galactic history. The news of humanity's connection to the predecessor technology had leaked, despite Director Patricia Stone's best efforts to control the information. Within weeks, every major civilization knew that humans had been chosen as inheritors of the most advanced technology the galaxy had ever seen. The reactions had been swift and predictable. The Altair hegemony is demanding immediate access to all predecessor sites, Commander Ryan Blake reported during the morning briefing. They're claiming that such power belongs to all advanced civilizations, not just humans. High researcher. Veltar had become increasingly hostile as the implications became clear. His species had ruled vast portions of the galaxy for thousands of years, and they could not accept that they had been passed over in favor of humanity. This is unacceptable, Veltar declared during what would be their final joint meeting. Hegemony has guided lesser species for millennia. We will not allow upstart humans to control weapons that could destroy star systems. But it was the synthetic collective that posed the greatest immediate threat. Their fleets had begun moving toward human space the moment their analysis confirmed what the predecessor machines were capable of. Unlike biological species that were driven by emotion and politics, the collective operated on pure logic, and their logic told them that humanity could not be trusted with such power. Biological entities are inherently unstable, their latest communication stated. Historical analysis shows 97.3% probability that humans will misuse predecessor technology within 50 years. This outcome is unacceptable. Technology must be secured by logical entities. Dr. Carl Hendricks had been working around the clock to unlock more of the machine's secrets, hoping to find something that could ease the growing tensions. Instead, he had made discoveries that made everything worse. "We've found references to 37 other machines," he announced. To the research team, "They're scattered across human space and beyond. Some are on worlds we've never even explored." Amy Foster had been studying the network specifications. "Each machine controls different aspects of the predecessor defense system," she explained. "Some manage terraforming technology, others control energy weapons, and a few handle what the database calls reality manipulation devices." The implications were staggering. If humans could activate the entire network, they would have access to technology that could reshape planets, create or destroy star systems, and manipulate space and time itself. No wonder the other species were afraid. Kate Stevens, an experienced pilot from the Terran Space Navy, had volunteered to lead the missions to locate and secure the other machines. Her first assignment was Iridian Prime, a desert world where orbital scans had detected predecessor technology buried beneath the sand. "The machine here is different," Kate reported after successfully activating the second site. "It's smaller, but it's projecting star charts that show jump gate locations throughout the galaxy. I think this one controls transportation." But Kate's team wasn't the only one heading for Iridian Prime. Zephyrian. Militants had decided that if they couldn't control the technology, they would destroy it. Battle was brief, but intense. Zephyrian ships swarmed the human research vessel while Kate and her team tried to defend the excavation site. The militants weren't trying to capture the machine, they were trying to destroy it with nuclear weapons. "They're not listening to reason," Kate radioed to her ship. "They'd rather see the technology destroyed than let us have it." The attack failed, but not before several Zephyrian weapons struck the machine's outer shell. The damage triggered massive energy discharge that disabled every piece of technology within 50 kilometers. Kate's team was stranded on the planet's surface. The machine itself began emitting dangerous radiation. Dr. Helen Morse, who had been studying the corrupted genetic markers in various alien species, made a disturbing discovery while analyzing the aftermath of the Iridian attack. "The Zephyrians, who participated in the assault," she reported, "they're showing advanced stages of devourer corruption. Much more than we detected before. The machine on Kepler 442c confirmed her fears. The corruption wasn't just old genetic modifications, it was active and spreading. The Devourers had been preparing their invasion for centuries, slowly converting key individuals within major civilizations. It's not just random corruption, Dr. Morse explained. They're targeting military leaders, scientists, and politicians. People in positions where they can cause maximum damage when the time comes. Tony Rodriguez had been working with security teams to identify potentially corrupted individuals. But the task was nearly impossible. The changes were subtle and well hidden. A corrupted person could live their entire life without knowing they were compromised until the moment they received their activation signal. We can't trust anyone from the other species, Tony concluded grimly. Any of them could be sleeper agents waiting for orders. The paranoia spread quickly through the galactic community. Ancient alliances began to crumble as species started suspecting each other of harboring Devourer agents. Trade routes were disrupted, diplomatic relations broke down, military buildups accelerated on dozens of worlds. Meanwhile, the long-range sensors continued to track the approaching Devourer fleet. The massive objects were still months away, but their size was becoming clear through deep space observations. Each ship was larger than most space stations, and there were hundreds of them. They're not just coming to invade, Danny Cooper reported after another session with the central machine. They're coming to harvest. The database shows records of previous invasions where they consumed entire civilizations, leaving nothing but empty worlds behind. Sam Murphy, a field researcher who had been working with smaller predecessor sites, made another crucial discovery. The machines aren't just defensive weapons, he announced. They're connected to something bigger, as the entire network is designed to work together, but it needs human operators at every node. Bob Martinez had been studying the technical requirements for network operation. The neural load is enormous, he warned. Operating even a single machine pushes human consciousness to its limits. Running the entire network would require dozens of operators, and most of them probably won't survive the strain. The weight of their inheritance was becoming clear. Predecessors hadn't just left humanity powerful technology. They had left them an impossible choice. Use the network to defend the galaxy and sacrifice many human lives in the process, or let the Devourers consume everything. Director Stone called a meeting of the senior research team to discuss their options. The political situation was deteriorating rapidly, and they needed to make decisions before events spiraled completely out of control. The other species will never accept our control of the network, she said, and we can't blame them. If the situation were reversed, we'd probably react the same way. But we don't have a choice, Amy argued. The machines only respond to humans. We can't share the technology even if we wanted to. Jake looked around the room at the tired faces of his colleagues. They had started this as a simple mining operation, and now they were discussing the fate of the entire galaxy. Maybe that's the point, he said. Maybe the predecessors knew this would happen. They knew that giving one species exclusive access to their technology would cause exactly this kind of chaos. Dr. Hendricks considered the idea. You think they wanted to divide the galaxy? Why would they do that? Because divided civilizations can't coordinate their defense, Jake realized. If the Devourers have been corrupting species for thousands of years, then traditional alliances are compromised. The only way to mount an effective defense is to break all the old connections and start fresh. Lisa Wells had been studying the predecessor historical records. The database shows similar patterns from previous Devourer invasions, she confirmed. They always attack when civilizations are unified and trusting. The corruption spreads faster through established communication networks and alliance structures. So we're supposed to tear apart galactic civilization to save it? Commander Blake asked. Maybe, Jake replied. Or maybe we're supposed to rebuild it afterward, with humans. As the connecting factor, instead of the old alliances, the debate continued for hours, but in the end, they knew they had no choice. The Devourers were coming, and the only weapon capable of stopping them was the predecessor network. Whether the galaxy liked it or not, humanity would have to take responsibility for defending it, as if responding to their decision. The machine on Kepler 442c began displaying new information. star charts showing the optimal deployment of human operators, tactical analyses of Devour weaknesses, and detailed instructions for coordinating the defense network. But the most important message was also the most ominous. It's the predecessor. Database estimated that successfully operating the network would require the sacrifice of at least 60% of the human operators involved. The alarms began sounding at dawn on Kepler-4 for to see their urgent wails echoing across the research facility. Jake Morrison ran toward the command center, knowing that the moment they had all been dreading had finally arrived. "They're here, Commander," Ryan Blake announced grimly as Jake entered the room. The main display showed long-range sensor readings from the galaxy's outer rim. Massive objects, each one larger than Earth's moon, were emerging from the darkness between galaxies. The Devourers had returned. Dr. Carl Hendricks was already working with the ancient machine, desperately trying to coordinate with the other predecessor sites across human space. "Getting responses from 34 machines," he reported. "But we need human operators at each location to activate the full defense network." The political situation had collapsed completely over the past month. The Altair hegemony had severed all diplomatic ties with humanity, declaring them a threat to galactic stability. The Zephyrian military was actively attacking human research sites, determined to destroy what they couldn't control. Even former allies were keeping their distance, unsure of what to believe. But as the Devourer fleet drew closer, everything changed. The corrupted individuals within various species began revealing themselves. Following activation signals that had been dormant for centuries, Zephyrian admirals turned their fleets against their own people. Altair politicians began advocating surrender to the approaching enemy. Synthetic collective units started sabotaging their own defensive systems. "It's happening everywhere," Tony Rodriguez reported from the security center.
Activate.
"Their crippling defenses spreading. Chaos. Preparing for the invasion." High researcher Veltar of the Altair hegemony appeared on the communication screen. But he was clearly no longer in control of his own actions. His eyes held an alien intelligence, and his voice carried harmonics that hurt to hear. "Resistance is futile," he said in a tone that was both his and something else entirely. "The Devourers have planned this moment for millennia. You're pathetic. Machines cannot stop what is coming." Ami Foster cut the transmission and turned to director Patricia Stone. "The corruption is total in some species. Can't count on any of our former allies. It's just us now." But even as the galaxy turned against them, desperate messages began arriving from individuals who had managed to resist the corruption. Clicks. The Zephyrian researcher who had been studying the machine sent a coded transmission explaining that a small group of his people had isolated themselves from their compromised leadership. "Not all of us are lost," his message said. "Some of us remember what we were before the poison in our minds. We cannot fight, but we can hide and hope that the humans succeed where we have failed." Sam Murphy had been working with predecessor sites throughout human space, desperately trying to find enough people capable of operating the defense network. The requirements were incredibly specific. Operators needed the right genetic markers, neural patterns, and mental strength to survive the connection. "We have volunteers at 28 sites," he reported during an emergency briefing. "The machine is warning us that we need at least 40 active nodes to create an effective barrier. Even then, the probability of success is only 60%. Vince Taylor, an engineer from the outer colonies, had volunteered to operate one of the most dangerous nodes. His site controlled weapons systems that could destroy entire star systems. But the neural load was so intense that previous test subjects had been left in comas. "I understand the risks," Vince said during his final briefing. "My family is on New Shanghai. If these things break through, everyone I care about dies anyway. At least this way, my death might mean something." Similar scenes were playing out across human space as volunteers stepped forward despite knowing the costs. Miners, engineers, scientists, soldiers, all volunteered to operate machines they barely understood, knowing that most of them would not survive the experience. Laura Kim, a technician on Kepler-4 for to see, had shown unusual compatibility with the central machine. Her neural patterns allowed her to interface more deeply than anyone except Danny Cooper, making her the ideal candidate to coordinate the entire network. "The machine is showing me the full scope of what we're facing," Laura explained to the Assembled team. The Devourers aren't just invaders. They're harvesters. They consume not just physical matter, but consciousness itself. Every species they've defeated becomes part of their collective intelligence. The approaching fleet had entered the galaxy's outer regions, and their true nature was becoming clear. The massive ships weren't vessels in any traditional sense. They were living entities, billions of years old and sustained by the consciousness they had absorbed from countless civilizations. They're not going to conquer us, Dr. Helen Morse realized. They're going to eat us. Every thought, every memory, every dream, it all becomes part of them. Annie Cooper had been working with the central machine continuously for days, pushing his neural interface capabilities to their absolute limits. The strain was showing. His hands shook constantly, and he had begun speaking in fragments of alien languages that the machine was feeding into his mind. The network is ready, he announced, during what everyone knew would be their final planning session. But once we activate it, there's no going back. Energy requirements will burn out most of the control systems. It's a one-shot weapon. Commander Blake studied the tactical displays showing Devourer movements throughout the galaxy. How long until they reach populated systems? Days, maybe hours, Danny replied. Their scout entities are already probing the outer colonies, and wherever they touch, entire worlds go silent. The decision was made without formal vote or ceremony. Across dozens of worlds, human volunteers took their positions at ancient machines that hummed with power beyond imagination. They were teachers and mechanics, doctors and farmers, united only by their species and their willingness to sacrifice everything for a chance to save the galaxy. All stations report ready, Sam Murphy announced from the coordination center. We have operators at 36 sites. It's not optimal, but it might be enough. Laura Kim placed her hands on the central control interface, feeling the machine's vast consciousness touch her mind. The neural connection was overwhelming. Millions of years of knowledge, the memories of the predecessors themselves, and the collective experiences of every species they had guided. I can see them, she whispered. The predecessors. They're still here, still watching. They're proud of us. Across the galaxy, the network began to activate. Reality itself started to bend as the machines drew power from sources that existed outside normal space-time. Stars flickered as their energy was redirected. Space warped and twisted as the predecessor's final gift came online. The Devourers noticed immediately. Their advance slowed as they encountered resistance unlike anything they had faced in billions of years. The network created barriers of twisted space-time that their entities could not cross. Corridors that led nowhere, and energy fields that disrupted their harvesting abilities. But the cost was enormous. At site after site, human operators collapsed as the neural load exceeded their biological limits. Vince Taylor managed to hold his position for nearly an hour before his mind simply burned out. But his sacrifice created a barrier that protected 3 entire star systems. On Kepler 4 to see, Laura Kim felt her consciousness expanding beyond the limits of her human brain. She was becoming something more than human, merging with the machine's intelligence to coordinate the galaxy-wide defense. I can hold them, she said, though her voice now carried harmonics similar to the machine's communications. The barrier. It's stable, but I can't maintain it forever. Jake Morrison watched from the observation deck as the battle raged in dimensions beyond normal perception. The Devourers threw themselves against the barrier repeatedly, each assault weakening both the network and its human operators. How long can we hold? Director Stone asked. Long enough, Laura replied, though everyone could see that her human form was fading, becoming translucent, as she merged more completely with the machine. The Devourers are retreating. They can't break through, and they're too old to adapt quickly. It will be centuries before they try again. The victory came at a price that no one had fully anticipated. Of the 36 human operators, only 8 survived the experience, and most of those were permanently changed by their contact with predecessor technology. Laura Kim had become something between human and machine, forever linked to the defense network. But the galaxy was safe. The Devourer fleet retreated beyond the galactic rim, their harvest denied. Across thousands of worlds, corrupted individuals suddenly found their minds cleared of alien influence. The ancient enemy's hold on the galaxy was broken. In the aftermath, The surviving alien civilizations slowly acknowledged what had happened. Humanity had saved them all, paying a price that no other species could have borne. The arrogance and fear that had driven them to oppose human access to predecessor technology seemed petty and small in comparison to the sacrifice that had been made. Commander, Blake found himself appointed as humanity's representative to a new Galactic Council, one that would be built around cooperation rather than competition.